In 2003, Sons and Daughters in Touch led the largest ever Gold Star pilgrimage to Vietnam and Southeast Asia. 50 Gold Star family members. Most of us were sons and daughters. There was a couple of siblings and spouses, but Gold Star, 50 Gold Star family members, 20 Vietnam veterans, some of them combat veterans, some of them Army nurses or military nurses who had served in the hospitals there in Vietnam. But the largest ever Gold Star pilgrimage to Vietnam, with the intent that those family members would get to that ground zero and they could stand exactly on the spot where their loved ones took their last breaths during the war. And it was a tremendous success. For me personally, standing in that ground zero meant crossing into Laos, hiking to the jungles where the crash site is, and doing it safely. So we made plans to do that. And when the rest of the travel party broke up into smaller groups, we all landed in Saigon together in early March 2003. After a couple of days of getting acclimated there, we traveled the Mekong Delta and the Cu Chi tunnels and some other ugly things like that. The group broke up into smaller groups and went to different parts of the country so they could achieve that mission. I was the last plane out of Saigon, to quote Jimmy Buffett. And I flew from Saigon to Vinh on the coast, the central coast of Vietnam, met some guides who drove me, whatever direction that is, east or west, from Vinh to the Laos border. So if you look at the map of Vietnam, it's kind of that little gooseneck. It's a narrow area. Still took us a couple of hours driving on a 2-lane highway where you got water buffalo and oxen pulling carts and stuff like that. And you're driving around it and they're honking at each other. And it was crazy. Drove from Vinh to the border of Laos. And then I crossed over from Vietnam into Laos, but my guides couldn't go with me. So here I am, a stupid American, the suitcase, walking through a dilapidated building that takes you from Vietnam to Laos. It looks like something out of the set of Indiana Jones because this building is falling down and there are Vietnamese military on one side, Lao military on the other. They check my passport. We'd already made these arrangements. And so I go through and there's a torrential rainstorm going on. But here I am. I walk into Laos and this rain is coming down like crazy. And a Toyota 4Runner pulls up and the back window goes down and it almost looks like an Italian mob hit from New York or something like that. And this guy asks me in broken English, "Are you Tony Cordero?" "Yeah." So they grab my suitcase, put me in the back, and we drive through this rainstorm over these swollen creeks and hills and stuff like that, and get to the village of Ban Namong, Laos, which is the closest civilized area in proximity to where J-22 went down. So I met with the village elders, very much a patriarchal society. The village chief and all of his elders, all men, wanted to talk to me. The women weren't allowed. I brought them a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey. I purchased it in Saigon at the advice of the State Department. Said, take them a gift. So I did. They brought out a ceramic pot with a big long bamboo straw, and we drank their whiskey, or drank their liquor. I guess it's called Lao Lao. And I brought licorice, red vine licorice, for all the little kids in the village. We talked about the crash site, and they said, okay, let's hike to it tomorrow in the morning. We woke up the next morning and had breakfast in the village chief's hut. And we're sitting around an open fire stove. They pass around a basket of sticky rice, and everybody's sticking their hands in there and taking a clump of it. And there are no bathrooms or hand towels or sanitizers or anything like that. So when in Rome, you just do as the Romans do. I took some rice, and then they passed around a basket of eggs, brown eggs. And I have no idea what kind of bird they came from. I thought, for some stupid reason, I thought they were hard-boiled eggs. So I watched everybody else. They took their fingers and they tapped on the side of the egg until it cracked open. And then They just drank it. They drank the raw egg. So I did too. Sticky rice and a raw egg. And then we went on the hike. Now, I'd been told that it was a 7 kilometer hike on a footpath to get to the crash site, but it was more than 7 kilometers and there was no footpath. 9 of us in a single file line, the guy in the very front, the guy in the very back, both carrying Chinese army rifles, guys with machetes cutting our way through the jungle, climbing over things, and I was the only American. I could have disappeared and nobody would know where to find me. It was absolutely stupid. Married with 4 children, and here I am trying to get to my dad's crash site. We get about, I don't know, 3/4 of the way to the site, and I'm exhausted. The hot blazing sun, the humidity in the jungle, I had some leeches that fell on me and stuff, and I started thinking, if I get to this crash site, what am I going to do? It means nothing to these people here. The only reason they're doing it is because we paid them. It means nothing to them. If I get there, what am I going to do? Now, mind you, the purpose is because the United States government has never done an excavation of that crash site. The plane went down in 1965. The search and rescue missions, we know for a fact, were circling areas in Vietnam, not over Laos. They were circling Vietnam looking for them. They couldn't find them. So they were missing in action. Cordero and Lovelace were missing in action from June of 65 to May of 69. And then serendipitously, someone delivers this mysterious carton to the military mortuary, army mortuary in Saigon. The contents are human remains, fragments of human remains, a couple of pistols, some eyeglasses, my dad's military ID card, and a note, unsigned note saying the contents of this box were found at this grid location. Never said who found them, never said when, why, or how. That's it. Now it's 600 miles from the crash site in Laos to Saigon. So that box was found at some point, Lord knows who, probably special forces going through there doing something that they weren't supposed to be in Laos doing, came across the crash site, looked at it, said, we've got to do our responsibility here, collect what we can, bring it back and hand it over to U.S. government officials. So they did that, but we don't know who it was. We don't know when they did it. But somehow those contents made their way from the crash site, the 600 miles south to Saigon. DNA testing wasn't available at that time, so the forensic pathologists looked at it and they said, the smoking gun is the Cordero ID card, which I now have in my possession. The smoking gun is that. It tells us who these people might be. This fragment remains look like they're from 2 different people. One could be the shorter Lovelace, the other one could be the little bit taller, more stocky, husky Cordero. We're going to say these remains belong to Cordero and Lovelace, but we're going to recommend they be buried together. And that's what they ended up doing. So they buried those contents in Arlington, Section 46 of Arlington National Cemetery. If you're in Arlington and you're anywhere close to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers and the Space Shuttle memorials, 5 spaces away in that very front row, you will find the Lovelace Cordero burial site. But the fact remains the United States government has never done an excavation of the crash site. And I know I'm getting long-winded here, but it bears stating. In the fall of 1994, October, November 1994, the U.S. department that is responsible for locating and identifying missing American service members, and there's 80,000 of them from World War II through Vietnam and to the present day, approximately 80,000 service members are missing and unaccounted for. So the department that is responsible for finding them and identifying them was in Laos, and they were taken to the crash site by the villagers of Ban Namong, the same ones that I met with and spent the night with. They just were there 10 years before me. They were told by those villagers that human remains had been buried at the crash site, and that one of the local villagers had the wallet of Charles Lovelace. So that U.S. government agency recovered the wallet of Charles Lovelace in 1994. They came back to Hawaii with all this information they didn't expect to find, and they recommended at that time that there be an excavation. If one has never occurred, an excavation should be performed because the likelihood of human remains at that site is great. That's an almost verbatim quote from 1994 and the US government at that time. So from 1994, we had been promised that they were going to do an excavation. In 2003, I go to Laos, try to hike to the crash site. It's too physically taxing. So I give up and I say, I can't do it. Let's turn around and go back. And I did it because number one, I was exhausted. Number two, we were only not quite or just beyond halfway to the site. I still had to get there, go through the emotions of being at that site, wondering if I'm standing on the ground that my dad's buried in, and then turn around and hike all the way back to the village. There was no way I could do that. And thirdly, I thought if I get there, the 9 people I'm with aren't going to understand my emotion. So do I really want to do this? And I said, okay, I quit. Took a nap, decided let's go back to the village. I need to get back to my people, which happened to be at the city of Hue, where the Tet offensive, one of the major sites of where the Tet offensive had occurred at that imperial capital of Hue. So we did that. I gave up. I said, let's go back to the village. We'll collect our things and let's head back to Vinh. We had a long drive to get back out of Laos and across Vietnam to Vinh. So we did that. The postscript of the story is this. There still has never been an excavation of the crash site. In fact, 2 years ago, the agency that is now known as DPAA, the Defense POW Accounting Agency, the agency that's known as DPAA is the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. They decided after 30 years they were going to pull the rug out from underneath us, kind of like Lucy doing that to Charlie Brown. She pulls the football away just as he's ready to kick it. They contact us and say, everything that we have told you for the last 30 years, from the fall of 1994 until today, everything's a mistake. It was done in error. We shouldn't have negotiated with the Lao. We shouldn't have spent money planning to do the excavation. We shouldn't have plotted it. We shouldn't have visited there 2 or 3 times. The 2 generals who wrote you letters promising your families that we were going to do the excavation, all of those promises should never have been made. We shouldn't have done this. So here, effectively, January of 2023, case closed, we're not going to do this. So to this day, the United States government has never done an excavation to proactively look for the remains of Charles Lovelace and William Cordero. I'll leave it at that.